There seems to be a bit of a barrier of entry due to the perceived difficulty in fighting games. In all honesty, fighting games are not more inherently difficult than any of the more popular competitive games, such as Counter-Strike or Dota. Counter-Strike has one of the highest mechanical ceilings in raw aim talent, yet also has immensely deep game knowledge such as enemy positions, crosshair placement, map timings, nade throws, economy management, and high pressure scenarios. Dota has thousands of hero compositions, item builds, orb walking, creep flow, jungle stacking, and the ability to dunk on people in all chat. These are just examples from two incredibly popular and growing esports. Now, there are two main reasons why I believe that they're so much more popular than pretty much all of the fighting games combined, and that's because 1, they're team-based, and 2, you can be bad at them while still having fun. In fighters, you're by yourself, and the cool character you picked 10 seconds ago is getting absolutely rolled in front of you. In all honesty, the team aspect will probably always make these games more popular to play, because it's still fun to play with your friends, win or lose. And the developers may pull so many more people to the game when there's a cooperative aspect. Because people who had little incentive to play will do so if their friend wants to play. In fighters, there is a purely competitive, if not slightly hostile environment, like hey, do you want to try this game out where I'll dice you up for an hour and then you'll never want to play this game or with me in general ever again. In an FPS or Dota, you can still play with your friends of varying skills by carrying them through the game. You can even teach them this way. So this is all fine and dandy, but what about my favourite fighting game? Well, there's always the ability to look at these genres and learn a thing or two. The thing to learn exactly is their ability to capture an ever-elusive audience for the fighting game genre. Normies. Now I mean this endearingly, and I also want to talk about two aspects of this title. League of Legends has so many people who don't even play video games outside of League, but also has such a huge plethora of ranked grinders who would probably love the challenges that fighting games have to offer. Well, maybe not them in particular because they're as addicted as WoW players who will think that anything is as good as their distant memories, but alas, there are for sure people who enjoy difficult journeys. I mean, Demon's Souls and its objectively worse sequels are extremely popular in the normie sphere, and they're somewhat punishing for a single player game. So how do we capture our elusive target? First, we need to get the player excited, then we need to make it a fun experience, and then we turn them into fans of the genre. Getting people hyped about something is at the forefront of many publishers' minds, as well as their wallets. Marketing can be difficult and expensive, yet everything becomes much easier when the product is really good. So we need to expand, refine, and innovate on the fighting game space to cast a wider net. I think some fighting games are pretty good at getting people interested at taking a peek at what the developer has to offer, while some would never ever come up in any surface level gaming conversation. Recently, Guilty Gear Strive has done wonders at selling the game to a wider audience, due to how visually appealing it is to an anime market. Even if it's not your cup of tea and the only anime you've watched is Naruto and Dragon Ball Z, it is still a huge hook to get people to take a bite out of your game. Now, whilst I do say this, we have had Melty Blood Type Luma come out to a lesser welcome normie response, so you can't have this be your only draw. Now, I'm not saying that this was their intention to get every cat and dog to pick up their game. It's perfectly fine to have it be designed for a specific niche. But no matter the intention, the game and characters need to draw you in with their art direction, their playstyle, how they move, and their special attacks. This kind of clear game direction sells a product to a specific type of consumer, whether it be the close quarters 3D rendered gameplay of Tekken 3, the super over-the-top violence-driven combat found in Mortal Kombat 2, or the colourful, arcadey and responsive gameplay of Third Strike. The last thing I would ever want is for Bandai Namco to look at Guilty Gear Strive and be like, yep, we need to go the anime route for Tekken 8. but I do believe you've got to craft a cohesive experience that captures a specific feeling to make it resonate with a non-fighting game audience, making them pick up that first controller. NetherRealm Studios does an incredible job at this. Legitimately every single one of my friends has picked up either Mortal Kombat 9, 10 or 11 because of things like fatalities, the crypts, the tower challenges and the over-the-top violence. These are the same people that don't even know that there is a block button. Now an IP will go a long way at getting people interested. I mean, you can put Goku on the cover of any game and millions of 90 kids will opt in. This is one of the many reasons why something like the Riot fighting game has piqued a lot of people's interest, as it probably has the most popular video game IP, with an already fleshed out art direction and universe, handled by a studio with wide appeal in mind, directed by two FGC legends. But moving forward, I will check out Tekken 8 because I love Tekken 7. I only got into Tekken 7 because the alternatives for me were not my specific flavour. But getting a Call of Duty player to try out Tekken 8 may be a tall order.
Shut your mouth!
Getting someone who loves watching the newest anime to try Guilty Gear Strive is probably not that difficult of a feat. Although a cohesive vision for a fighting game may just get the person to check out the YouTube videos, so let's tackle a particular problem. There are two huge stigmas when it comes to this genre, and they are also complete contradictions. They are, fighting games are way too hard to get into, and fighting games are just button mashing nonsense. I've heard both my entire life, and I must admit I fell victim to placing Tekken into my blind spot up until I ditched Street Fighter V, thinking that Tekken was just some casual fighter. I know that may be crazy to think, but to break this you have to get the game in people's hands. And to get people to play your game, you need them to buy it. Or do you? I'm sure fighting games are expensive to develop, not $480,000 per stage expensive, but I know that each character is extremely intricate and there is a lot more going on than most games. But as we're approaching the future, it's a little hard to justify $160 for a game we may not even enjoy. Now, I do believe that in the future, free-to-play will be the dominating force for most avenues, but more so for fighting games. If the monetary barrier is void, people will try it even if they're just remotely interested. Now, I don't think every game needs to be free-to-play yesterday. It makes less sense for a super niche, hardcore fighting game to bank on the free-to-play market when only passionate enthusiasts were already going to drop that $50 on the game, but being free does put some oil in the gears of the interested spectator. I'm not going to walk you through the monetary model of free-to-play, but a cosmetic approach in other games has proven to be very profitable. The real main reason I do think that the free-to-play component works wonders for a lot of these huge competitive games is because the tournaments get super hyped up, which are incredibly fun to watch, even for people who don't play these games, which then motivates people to jump into the game, and lo and behold, a huge chunk of the audience plunges into the gaming sphere due to its free-to-play nature. So yes, I do believe that free-to-play is a powerful tool for broadening the audience of fighting games, but it's just one part of the puzzle. If we were to have someone watch an amazing grand final set, then jump into a fighting game, there's a great chance they're going to get absolutely destroyed. Worse yet, if someone didn't sit around on Twitch watching random tournaments for different games, they may look at a game like Street Fighter and not see any value in its purely competitive content. When you boot up a modern fighting game, outside of Mortal Kombat, you'll be lucky to find a practice mode, versus mode, and some kind of online versus mode. Even the flagship fighting games may be missing certain things. Okay, for someone who is new to the genre, they'll probably jump into arcade or versus mode because they came here to play. Now, two things will probably happen. You'll just click buttons until 30 minutes later, the game is over, the credits roll, and you're sitting there thinking, well, that was pretty easy. Or you click buttons until 30 minutes later, you rage quit as the boss is continually two-shotting you over and over. Neither sounds like too much of a great time, and in all honesty sets that individual up for that sweet 2-hour Steam refund window. Now, let's not get into the teaching people how to play aspect just yet, but how do we simply make the game enjoyable for a new player? Well, I believe that the game needs enjoyable content that produces a gameplay loop that is more diverse than tricking the AI until we have a ring out. Yes, I do believe that the game of course should be balanced and focus on multiplayer, but I do think this is the one time we may have our meter and spend it too. The aforementioned games like League of Legends and Counter-Strike do not have single player content, but they have a vastly superior casual magnet, which is playing with your friends to achieve a common goal. Fighting games have the complete opposite environment. Therefore, I think that one key aspect that fighting games may diverge on is their alternative fighting game content, therefore providing a unique and attention-grabbing hook that gets random players excited to dip their feet into the fighting game ocean. So yes, I am aware of a pretty decent problem when it comes to single player content. The AI. Now I'm going to be completely honest, in my opinion, fighting game AI has to be one of the most horrendously constructed bunch of bots I've ever encountered. Yes, half the time in an FPS, AI have aimbot, and in RTS, a lot of the time they just get triple resource generation, but the bots in fighting games either read your inputs or just do absolutely nothing. Now I'm not going to sit here and pretend that I have all the solutions, even though I did devote a decent chunk of my academic studies to machine learning, and there is probably some room for implementation in modern fighting games. There are hundreds of thousands of matches that they could harvest datasets to refine the AI, and it doesn't even have to be incredible, just not this bad. To be completely honest, you don't even need some kind of neural network for a fighting game. Just a little bit of thought would go a long way in opening up pathways for a vast array of casual offline experiences. Here are just some concepts that fighting game devs may have for free, so long as the AI wasn't so special needs. A tactics-like campaign such as Final Fantasy Tactics, where your unit's jobs are instead different characters, and they can level up and get different stats if you want. I mean, it doesn't have to be honest Tekken, it's just a single player game. Combat could be dedicated to a round only, if you lose 3 rounds over the course of the map, your unit is defeated. You can even play this kind of thing online for a fun side game, it doesn't have to be single player content only. You could have a roguelite game like Azure Dreams, where you navigate a labyrinth and starting off with a weak character and slowly increasing your upgrades with more health, access to certain moves, free EX moves, maybe an additional tag partner, all while defeating enemies in a fighting game style. When you lose, you may bring some resources back to town with you where you can purchase incremental upgrades, you know, the usual roguelite stuff. Ironically, one of the most enjoyable main game experiences could probably be one of those anime arena fighting game campaigns, where it's just random quests for the story strung together with random battles. It's also one of the least complex to develop. Now you can expand upon this by making it more RPG-like, with more party members for tag options, or allowing you to mix and match your character's moveset to make a completely overpowered character. I could go on, but I feel as if this tangent has gone on for long enough. All I'm saying is that there is more that the developers can do. It's also such an easy thing then to lead these players into training mode or versus mode, because it's like, okay, that opponent I just versed did this awesome move that I want to try out. Or like, I just can't clear this level because I don't know how to play this character. Let me go try them out in training mode. I feel as if internet access has allowed devs to just phone it in and release bare bones games because hey, you can always play online. Now this would be wonderful if fighting games online didn't play like some kind of slow-mo dream sequence, but this really doesn't do much to excite a new player. Especially if they just get completely blown out for the first 100 online matches. Which is why the matchmaking system needs to be precise, and the single player content should be educating the players on the mechanics and concepts required to play a fighting game. I think it's great how in older games they had casual content such as Puzzle Combat and Tekken Ball, although I do personally believe that campaigns that diverge from the core mechanics of the fighting game found in the Versus mode are kind of poor gimmicks, as it's not really representative of the game and does little to get players interested in the actual content. This is all my opinion, of course. No matter what though, if the player is enjoying the offline content, that at least gets them excited and tuned into the world of fighting games, whether it be trying to become a better player, supporting tournament play, or simply buying the next iteration. The additional content also doesn't have to be confined to solo and offline play. Having concepts like squad battles where it's a 3 versus 3 and you can challenge other squads to a battle for glory would go a long way giving purpose to your sessions outside of chasing an arbitrary rank. These are just dumb little concepts that I do believe would go a long way, as deeper single/cooperative experiences would help for settling new players. I really don't think it's too much to ask of devs when they're charging full prices for games to have more than just a versus, arcade, and bare bones practice. I'm also of the opinion that a lot of people will fall on the company's sword, saying all I need is a versus mode, and they have long forgotten what it's like to enter the genre as a beginner, and therefore please forward all of your complaints to your local subreddit. I do think that getting players to a certain level in which they can hold their own against half of the player base makes them way more likely to stick around and have a good time. So how do we make that happen? My first fighting game was probably Mortal Kombat 2 for the Super Nintendo Entertainment System. I had no idea what I was doing, and I would get rolled whenever my brothers and neighbours would do the old Sub-Zero Ice Blast into uppercut move. Now, gaming back then was a different beast. It was so fun to play fighting games with your friends in person. It didn't matter if you were bad because you were happy just to be hanging out. Fast forward 20 years, playing fighting games in your PJs, getting carried to the wall by an anonymous Elisa player and key charge over and over again does hit differently. I don't blame someone for trying out a fighting game in 2021 for the first time, getting absolutely dumpstered, refunding it and then playing Minecraft. Losing can be fun, but feeling hopeless never is. I've pondered over and over why fighting games have this barrier of entry for a lot of people for many years now, and I have no idea if I'm progressing or regressing in terms of a solution, but at least I have some things to share. If you had two FGC veterans play Street Fighter 4 and show off some insane links, and there's a noob watching, they're not going to think there's too much of a point in throwing their hat in the ring. Now, there are plenty of reactions we may take here, but the fundamental principle is that if the noob wants to have fun playing in that rotation, they're going to have to get good. If you had two noobs play Street Fighter 4 and they button mash over and over again, statistically speaking, either one can win. Therefore, the spectator noob will probably think it's not too tough to jump into that rotation and have a chance at winning. I do not think that making these games easy does anyone good, especially when it comes at the cost of the identity of the fighting game. One of the reasons I've played so much Street Fighter over the course of my life is the joy I get out of doing Hadouken motions. It really does feel like you're throwing a ball of fire at the incoming opponent. I do think it's perfectly fine if a new game wants to go in a different direction, such as Riot Games or Power Rangers having no motion inputs. I just think it's different strokes for different folks. What I do think is unnegotiable is not explaining game mechanics and fighting game concepts to your new players. I believe that having a wall of trials as your standalone tutorial is better than nothing. I mean, having it there as a reference for advanced mechanics is actually pretty great, but expecting people to kind of trudge through 2 hours of lessons before they feel like they're even playing the game is gonna turn a lot of people off. Alongside this, when you observe these tutorials, they're implemented in a way that you're not exactly sure, at least as a new player, why you're failing at them. Sometimes it's a specific link timing that you're just not getting and the game won't really help you along. Now, Mortal Kombat 11 at least points you in the general direction of fixing your mistake. But I would really love if developers implemented some kind of rhythm-esque style of teaching players links if they're putting trials into their game. Playing fighting games at a decent level is one of the most enjoyable and unique experiences. Yet unless you're playing with friends, getting to that level can kind of be a drag. I believe that you can try a few different things to level up your player base. One is to utilize better AI and single player content in fighting games to educate the player base. When you play StarCraft, you get the mechanics drip fed to you through the campaign, receiving more units and buildings and tech the further you progress. So when you try a custom match and are bombarded with all of these options, it's at least not the first time you see them. Other games power up your character throughout the story, granting you tools and resources one by one, so you can master each aspect before another one is introduced. That's what offline content should do for fighting games. I do think it's better than expecting people in the wider community to pick up your slack. But having said that, if the devs are really struggling for whatever reason to produce the basic educational content that these games need, at least provide a platform for those in your community who will. I've said it before, Tekken has so much wasted screen real estate that could be allocated to the greater community. Imagine if you selected a character, then you click a button and it just brought up this in-game video explaining the different strengths and weaknesses for that character. Then you could bring them into training mode and selection assist mode that would walk you through the usefulness of different tools that you may invest your time in. Now yes, you can master all of the mechanics you want offline, but bringing your gameplay online or to another person is always going to be a different story. I remember playing StarCraft for ages offline, and then when I went online, I got cannon rushed so fast it almost caused an existential crisis. Offline will never fully prepare you for the thrill of fighting a real opponent, but it will give you a fighting chance. The game should also give you a fighting chance by introducing a well-structured online matchmaking system alongside meaningful tools to better the player with each match. I honestly feel as if people have never played a game outside of the fighting game genre because the bare bones services provided here are not normal. If you do want to help grow the fighting game audience, show them great moments from these games that they have to offer and point them towards resources that can help them get good. Maybe one day fighting game developers will finally catch that elusive audience. Thanks for watching. All of my subscribers and any new subscribers will receive a 1-month buff to learning a new game. If any game has looked like it's got a fun competitive scene and you wanted to try it out, now's a good time to have a look. Especially over the Christmas break when there are a bunch of noobs playing. Bye.